I've asked Jerry to start by reading this poem, which I brought. I actually was going to be here in March to see you, but the other plans came up, and so I'm here today. And this poem has come up over and over since then. And since it's so integral to all of the things that I've been thinking about talking to you about, I wanted to ask Jerry to read it. And
did he agree?
Sure.
I'm really serious.
Oh, that's you. Hold on, late.
You could sit in her chair.
Would you like to sit in my chair?
I could do it from here. Just turn this on. Am I on? Yes.
Okay. How keen was the vision of Sir Launfal by Ogden Nash. Man's earliest pastime, I suppose, was to play with his fingers and his toes when, then later, wearying of himself, he devised the monster and the elf. Enlivening its existence, grab with blunderbore and puck and map. A modern man in modern Maryland, I boast my private gate to fairyland, my kaleidoscope, my cornucopia. My own philosopher's stone, myopia. Except when rationalized by lenses, my world is not what other men's is. Unless I have my glasses on, the postman is a leprechaun. I can wish on either of the 2 new moons. Billboards are graven with mystic runes. Shirts hung to dry are ragtag gypsies. Mud puddles loom like Mississippis. And billiard balls resemble plums, and street lamps are chrysanthemums. If my vision were 2020, I would miss miracles aplenty.
And I just, that poem came back to me this year as I was contemplating. I'm a writer and a thinker and a conscious creator. And that poem first crossed my life as a little girl in my grandfather's boathouse. And I was born with severe myopia, which meant I had glasses like Coke bottles for my entire childhood. And that poem set me free from that idea that there was something wrong with me, that the myopia was a problem. And recently I've really come full circle in this appreciation of our rhythm of expansion and understanding this consciousness that we are. I've certainly been on this path my whole life. And I'm definitely on your weekly tape program, and I'm not going to cancel. And I was thinking about some concepts recently that have been illuminated sort of by conversations we've been having. We probably have had 250 ourselves just in the last 2 weeks since I really decided I would be here today. And one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is this idea of Abraham is often talking about the fact that Esther is not the vortex through which the world can come to know internal guidance. And it seems
because everyone has their own.
Because everyone has their own.
Yes.
And every single person's internal guidance is specific to them. And it's been
dawning to them and to their moment.
And it's been dawning on me recently how spectacular that is. And I want to jump right into graduate level deliberate creation conversation here because I have been practicing. And one of the things that I think we all have a tendency to do is to talk about the ideas and to observe Abraham and to not bother practicing. And when you practice, suddenly this whole world opens up. And one of the parts of that world is what I think of as the integration of our inner reality, or what the shamanic culture or Joseph Campbell might call the subtle reality, or the reality of consciousness, as well as integrating that into our external physical reality. And what I'm discovering is this powerful path that is the integration of my power allies, grandparents, Ogden Nash. All kinds of people are in this inner reality of mine, and they're constantly coming up with great suggestions and ideas. And it's like, now we're just on this roll. And it occurred to me recently, thinking about that the nature of this consciousness, for example, if you talk about power animals in the shamanic realm, horse, eagle, all of these archetypes, in my own personal experience, when I interact with them, when I journey, when I talk with them, I think everybody goes through that first process of thinking, well, I'm making this whole thing up. And then you get to a place where it doesn't matter that you're making the whole thing up, because you do understand you're interacting with consciousness. And I wondered if you would talk a little bit about the nature of this consciousness of, say, horse, who appears on the Salisbury Plain in England in this giant chalk drawing, and has obviously been with man a long time and has this consciousness.
It's interesting, you acknowledge and spoke very well about how you recognize that it is your point of attraction. In other words, you talk about your grandparents or the author or whoever else seems to be in this cluster of consciousness that you are interpreting, but you are recognizing that you are the common denominator. You are the one who is activating the vibration and sort of pulling them all together. And we are enjoying your conclusions about this because everything is about attraction. Nothing is about assertion.
I'm quite clear on that.
It's also interesting because in recent weeks, Esther's father made his transition a few weeks ago, and Esther began right away hearing from him. And she found the experience to be satisfying but a little bit unsettling because she is hearing her father in much the same way as she is hearing Abraham, but she can feel the difference between what she has always known as Abraham and what is her father. They were driving down the freeway within a day or two of him making his transition, even before she had gone back for the funeral. And in her driving state of sort of meditation, her hand began thumping on the steering wheel, and she knew it was some sort of an alert. And she said, What? As they passed a sign that said Weaver Road, and that was his name. And she smiled and said, okay, I get it. You're with me. You're aware of where I am. You're so aware of where I am that you can let me know you are aware of where I am. She liked the sensation of that, although she knows that we thump on her leg anytime we want to get her attention. So there was a little confusion about whether it was in fact her father or whether it was us reminding her of her father. But somehow she sensed it was beyond that which she knows as us. And then within another minute, her hand began to thump again, and she saw a trailer that they were passing that said Layton, and that is the city where her parents have been living for the last many years. And she thought that was amusing. All right, now this is beginning to get her attention. And then subsequently had several conversations with the energy that she knows to be her father, satisfying in-depth conversations beyond anything that she has had while he was physically focused for many, many reasons. Tremendous satisfaction in these conversations. And so Jerry and Esther, as you heard from Jerry, took the Alaskan cruise, testing it for all of you to make sure that it is appropriate. And Esther met several families who were taking the cruise together, celebrating 80th birthdays and 50th wedding anniversaries. And Esther felt a little sad for a moment because she always thought how nice it would be to take her parents on a cruise. And by the time the idea was appealing to her, they were not in physical health to be able to achieve it. And so Esther was feeling a little bit melancholy about not having achieved that. And then she thought, wait a minute, Daddy, how do you like this cruise? And in that moment, she heard a song that he sang often when she was a child in the car, On the Road to Mandalay, where the flying fishes play. And as she is enjoying his voice in her head, Jerry's on the balcony calling, Esther, Esther, come quick, you have to see the flying fish. And then Esther said, we worry too much about this death thing.
Yes,
because there clearly is not any. It became evident to Esther that not only is her father alive and well, he is extremely interested in what she is doing and in what she is thinking. And she can call him forth with the slightest thought, and she can express to him things that she's always wanting him to know. And she can feel his understanding of it and the satisfying communication that's coming back. But then, in all of that, now Esther is beginning to ask some of these questions that you were asking. In other words, what is this consciousness, and where does Abraham end, and where does my father begin? And she said to us, Abraham, how do I know that I'm hearing my father and not hearing you speaking on his behalf? And we said, Esther, when you're in a room, even if you were blindfolded, you could pick out the voices in the room. You would know who was speaking. You would know the vibrational intonation. And often, even when you read the words, you would know who had spoken the words. In other words, you could read a script of a family gathering, and without knowing who, you would know who said what. That was mother. That was sister, that. In other words, you would know, and in the same way, you can decipher these vibrational differences. But the most significant thing that we're wanting to reply to you is, you are the summoner of it. In other words, it is by your asking that it comes forth. And we would not spend very much time. We know it is especially interesting to Esther right now to hear the specifics that is coming from the specific energy that is her father. And she's hearing him say things to her like, they're telling me this, or they're telling me that. And she can feel that it is his becoming reintegrated. And she can feel his clarity about the broader picture coming on stronger every day. In other words, she can feel this formulation of consciousness. But what she is beginning to question, and we can feel it from what you are offering here, is this focusing happening within Esther, or is this focusing happening within her father? Is her father really getting more oriented, or is Esther getting more used to the idea? Is Esther allowing him now to be who he really is and asking him to be less who he always was?
Right.
You see, and that's the thing that we want you to understand. You are the summoner of it, and it is through your perspective that it is deciphered.
Well, the thing that occurred to me when I thought particularly about Horse, because Horse is a very big player in my inner world, and we have a lot of conversations. And one of the things that I've discovered really is this wonderful sense of the transformation of the energy of all of the things that power represents.
Those are good words.
Me personally.
Those are good words that power represents, because you are the focuser of it. In other words, everything that you are experiencing in your physical environment is interpreted through the perspective or the perception that you hold. And all kinds of symbols and stories and belief systems have been put into place by you so that you can make sense of your world. And you are viewing the broader world through the narrower lens of your physical world, because this is the vibrational environment in which you stand. This is the environment through which you perceive. And so in many ways, you have to make whatever it is that is non-physical fit in the framework of that which you understand. Otherwise,
You can't interact with
you couldn't interact with it, or you couldn't make sense of it. But there is some discomfort from you. In other words, we can feel that what's at the basis of your question is, how much of this is being projected from Horse or from whatever I'm focused upon, and how much of it is of my doing. And we want you to understand that in this environment where law of attraction is the manager, there is very little difference in what you have summoned and what has summoned you, because there has to be mutual attraction for you to have come together.
Right.
You can't achieve a vibration that something else has not achieved and bring it to you. In other words, it is always a mutual attraction. And so it would be accurate to say that the summoning is mutual.
Right. Well, the thing that struck me about all of this is that, number one, and it comes back to some of these other concepts that I've been playing with. It's about coming into this place where we are inside the realm. Seth used to talk about learning the inner landscape and learning your own symbols, because it teaches you about how you are thinking and what you're doing. And once you get on a path of paying attention to your thoughts, there's a lot that you can see and learn about how you tend to do things in ways and paths that can waylay you in new ways to do that.
And you can chart your own expansion. Until you have established your own pattern, you can't make sense of your own expansion. It just feels like fragments. But once you establish your own awareness of your own patterns, then you can chart your own expansion.
Exactly. And I think about, for example, the progression of where I am now to where I was the last time I sat in this chair with you, when we were talking about my now 19-year-old son, and I was talking about power of influence. And I look around at my life, and it's so much. Learning this positive aspect game has been incredible. I mean, watching my whole family just transform around me reignited my
Because
marriage.
you practice a vibration and keep a vibration active within you, and then that becomes the rendezvous point from those that you are interacting with. It is
Exactly.
powerful.